Joining us in the studio is Labor MP Ed Husic. It looks like, as I say, everything pointing to the fact that Lambie has signed up now for this repeal.
Good morning. I think that is a reasonable assumption, as you heard being prosecuted there by Christina Keneally. The government's response, I mean, this is not a government who's basically building a reputation on being honest and transparent. They're claiming there's no such deal, but why would you bring the vote on? And if they do so, this has been a relentless campaign by them purely to get their way in the face of the facts that this bill has not led to the type of things that the government said would happen. Frankly, it has worked effectively, efficiently, fairly, humanely, and for the government to do this is purely something driven by pride and arrogance rather than recognising that this has been a bill that has done what it's supposed to.
This was passed, though, without the support of the government. It was this time last year that it was a pretty extraordinary move, and the government did win an election with an increased majority. Is that not a mandate for them to then repeal the legislation?
I think there have been a lot of other representatives, Annalise, elected to this parliament who've got strong views on this issue, and the parliament does reflect broader community sentiment. And if it ain't broke, then you don't need to fix it. In this case, the bill has worked in the way it's intended.
When it comes to Jackie Lambie, it looks like there's been some arrangement with the government on national security. She won't go into it. It seems quite bizarre, to be honest, that the parliament, regardless of what you think of the medevac bill, the fact that there's no transparency on what they're voting on seems unusual.
Precisely, and I think the parliament should be entitled to make decisions on a clear basis of fact, of understanding what has been done, what has been said, and importantly the logic behind the decisions too, because there are some decisions that get made that it later turns out you would question how those decisions would come about, and I think it's only right for people in the parliament to have all that detail and fact before them.
This is a decision, though, that if Senator Lambie hadn't been asking for it, the government still could have enacted it anyway without making it public.
And I think there'll be a number of questions that rightfully should be directed to Senator Lambie to explain the position that's been taken. In the face, as I said, when you look at the operation of the bill, it has not led that the scare campaign that the government claimed has not eventuated.
Let's look at some other issues. Angus Taylor will be in the Labor sights again today. Regardless of what the New South Wales investigation comes up with, or even if it dismisses it, it seems Labor's not going to drop this in a hurry.
Two things. I think the problem now with that investigation is it's tainted. You need to have the perception that justice has been done. Scott Morrison, you just cannot have a Prime Minister ring a police commissioner, and I think the problem will be that everyone will question whether or not this was a fair dinkum investigation. Terrible position to put the New South Wales Police in. Today's D-Day for both Angus Taylor and for Scott Morrison. The government has been required by the Senate to produce the documents at 12:45 p.m. today. This is, in effect, calling out Angus Taylor, who's misled from our point of view, the parliament at least half a dozen times, produce the documents that Angus Taylor reckons led him to do the stunt that he did. If he can't, then clearly he's misled the parliament, and on that basis Scott Morrison should get rid of him if he's got any commitment to his own ministerial standards. I mean, Angus Taylor created the mess. Scott Morrison then tainted the entire government in trying to clean up this mess. They've got to fix this mess up today and avoid the distraction that this has created in terms of the parliament in the final 2 sitting weeks of the year.
When you say misled the parliament, that's a pretty serious accusation to level at someone. Is it substantive enough what he's accused of misleading the parliament on to stand him down, though? We're talking about things like saying he lived near a feminist writer when he didn't, and some political correct thing when it's interest in a company that never held any assets. Should we be talking about more serious things if you're going to stand someone down for misleading Parliament? Annalise,
the substance of Labor's accusations rely on Angus Taylor's claims that he had these documents, that he downloaded them when the metadata didn't back that, when the public internet archives don't back that up. You cannot have a minister make claims about another level of government, particularly the City of Sydney, in the way that you do, and not be accountable for it. While I do take on board your point about claims he made about what he saw when he was a Rhodes Scholar, that's not really the nub of our issue. Our issue is that someone like Angus Taylor cannot do that, but I guess Angus Taylor proves that you can be a Rhodes Scholar and not be too bright.
Aren't you underestimating the strength of character and commitment to their values of the police, though, the New South Wales Police Commissioner, by saying that it's tainted, this investigation?
No, I'm not.
How would he... he wouldn't be much of a commissioner if he let one phone call affect the outcome of an investigation.
Can I please stress, I did indicate earlier, Kieran, that this has put the New South Wales Police in a terrible position, and I don't for one moment question their professionalism in going through this. They have been put in a terrible spot by the Prime Minister. On top of that, the best way, in terms of the call itself, to understand what happened is Christian Porter's got a job here as well. And Christian Porter has been asked a number of times by us in Parliament, what did you give advice not to do this? He won't answer the question. I mean, Christian Porter will go and talk at length to David Crowe, and there'll be a whole chapter in the David Crowe book about advice given to Prime Ministers by him as Attorney-General, but he won't answer the direct questions on the floor of the Parliament about whether or not he thought this was a good idea. The Chief Law Officer of the land should have a view on this. Tell us.
Just on that point you were saying about misleading the Parliament on the travel figures, those were figures that they realised pretty quickly were wrong because they were so ludicrous. So in what instance did he actually mislead the Parliament on those? Because that was quite a time after before he actually got up in Parliament to make the statement about it.
Angus Taylor realised there was a problem post-fact, like after, or post-stunt, I should say. Like post-stunt, when everything was blown up in his face, he then went and grabbed his calculator. Really, the time to do that was before he did the stunt.
Yeah, no, it was a bad move. It was obviously a complete own goal, but to the accusation of misleading Parliament, he never stood up in Parliament and said Clover Moore spent $14 million on travel.
No, when we challenged him on how he made that, he was defending himself at first, and then he's constantly refused to produce these documents that he relied upon, and he's got himself in all sorts of mess. I mean, he's got to now fess up to it. Something
else before you go that you've been arguing this week is in relation to the very flat wages in this country. What's the nub of the problem here, though, in terms of how to get it moving? It's such a complex area, but how do you give workers more clout in terms of their bargaining power?
Well, the government's got no wages policy. I'm very uncomfortable with the RBA trying to condition us that low wages is the new normal. And the reality is that when Treasury asks CEOs, are you going to pay a wage increase, 40% of them in their survey said no, and the RBA's found only 10% will provide above average outcomes. This basically shows you there's a problem in bargaining power for average workers. If CEOs won't pay, they're saying, make us. There's nothing to make them. So I think that, frankly, we've got to look at how we improve the bargaining position of workers, and if that means giving them more ability to undertake industrial action, so be it. Because, frankly, we cannot have low wages growth the way it is. It's hurting ordinary families while company profits and senior wages are going through the roof.
Ed Husic, thanks so much. Appreciate it.